The sun burned overhead as I parked at the edge of my parents' curved driveway, already crowded with the polished SUVs and luxury sedans of relatives who'd arrived before me. My arms balanced Grandma Edith's barbecue dish, the recipe she'd whispered to me alone on her faded floral couch 3 summers ago. "You're the only one with the patience to get it right, Delaney," she'd said, her paper-thin hand covering mine. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. 35 years old, professional architect with a master's degree, leader of a multi-million-dollar sustainable housing project, and still primping like a teenager before facing my family. The scent of charcoal and hickory smoke drifted over the manicured lawn. American flags fluttered from the porch columns, red, white, and blue bunting draped across the railings. The Morrison family 4th of Julia, 30-year tradition of pretending we were the perfect American family, at least until someone had too many gin and tonics. I heard laughter spilling from the backyard, the familiar cadence of my brother Brent's voice rising above the others, followed by my father's appreciative chuckle. Some jokes never needed to be funny to earn his approval. "This time will be different," I whispered, the same lie I'd told myself before every family gathering since college. "Doctor." Stone's voice echoed in my mind from our Thursday session. "Remember, Delaney, your worth doesn't depend on their recognition." Easy for her to say. She wasn't carrying a dish that had taken 4 hours to perfect while balancing a tote bag filled with carefully wrapped presents for everyone, even Brent, who last Christmas had forgotten to bring anything for me while presenting monogrammed golf accessories to our father and a spa package to our mother. I straightened my shoulders and walked through the side gate to the backyard. The familiar tableau unfolded before Meath's long table beneath the oak tree, white linen tablecloth glowing in the dappled sunlight, sterling silver gleaming beside china plates that only appeared for special occasions. My steps slowed as I counted. 13 people milling around the yard, but only 12 place settings at the table. "Delaney, you made it." My mother Marlene floated toward me in a linen dress the color of aged ivory, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. She air-kissed near my cheek, careful not to disturb her makeup. "What's this?" She peered at the dish in my hands. "Grandma Edith's barbecue." I offered it like a peace treaty. "Oh," the slight downturn of her mouth spoke volumes. "Well, just put it on the other side. We're almost ready to sit down." I glanced again at the table. "Mom, there are only 12 plates." She followed my gaze, then waved her hand dismissively. "We ran out of good china. You can just grab a sandwich and eat in the garage." The words landed like a slap. Around us, conversations dimmed as relatives pretended not to listen. "The garage?" I repeated, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. Brent appeared beside us, crystal tumbler in hand. "That's more fitting anyway." He smirked over the rim of his glass. "It's all she's good for." The silence that followed hung heavy in the summer air. I watched as Aunt Patricia suddenly found her napkin fascinating. Uncle George examined the sky as if checking for rain on a cloudless day. My father Douglas stood frozen by the grill, spatula mid-flip, choosing yet again to say nothing. Across the table, my cousin Clara adjusted her sapphire ring, Grandma Edith's ring, the one promised to Meath's sunlight catching the deep blue stone. Beside her, my sister Sabrina stared intently at her phone, another deliberate absence of support. I set Grandma's dish carefully on the overcrowded buffet table. 30 years of similar moments crystallized in that single heartbeat, the school plays where my parents arrived late and left early. The dance recitals they skipped entirely while attending every one of Brent's baseball games, the graduation dinner where my full scholarship announcement was overshadowed by Sabrina's new boyfriend. Something shifted inside me, a tectonic plate finally breaking free after decades of pressure. I stood taller, my shoulders squaring with newfound resolve. "Actually," I said, my voice clear and steady as I reached into my tote bag, "before anyone eats, I have something for you, Brent." He raised an eyebrow, amusement playing across his face as I withdrew an envelope. I walked to the head of the table where he stood, my steps measured and calm despite the hammering in my chest. Eyes followed me, discomfort radiating from the assembled family members like heat from the July pavement. I placed the envelope on his plate right next to the sterling silver fork that had been set for him but not for me. "What's this?" Brent asked, his cocky smile wavering slightly at my unusual composure. Open it, I said. I think you'll find it illuminating. The backyard fell into a hush. Even the oak leaves stopped their summer rustling, as if nature itself waited to witness this moment 30 years in the making. Uncle George suddenly found the sky fascinating, searching for rain clouds in the perfect blue. Aunt Patricia twisted her napkin into a tight coil. My father remained frozen by the grill, spatula suspended above a sizzling burger patty. Brent's fingers tapped the envelope. Another one of your little projects? His voice carried that familiar, dismissive tone, but something flickered behind his eyes. Uncertainty. Just open it, Brent. My voice remained steady, a foundation I'd spent months reinforcing in Dr. Stone's office. He slid his finger beneath the flap with theatrical slowness, his audience captive. The envelope tore with a sound like truth ripping free. When he pulled out the contents, his smirk collapsed. What the hell is this? The papers trembled slightly in his hand. Page 1 is a screenshot of the email you sent to Richardson Development last spring. I stepped closer, pointing to the highlighted section. You told them I was unreliable and fundamentally incapable of handling projects of that scale. Interesting. Since they hired me anyway and my sustainable housing design just won a regional award. Marlene's hand flew to her throat, pearls clicking against her manicured nails. Delaney, this is hardly appropriate for. Page 2. I continued as if she hadn't spoken. Is a transcript of your phone call with Grandma Edith's attorney after she died, when you claimed she told you the sapphire ring was meant for Clara. Clara's fingers instinctively covered the deep blue stone on her right hand. Her eyes widened, darting between Brent and me. Page 3 is a copy of Grandma's actual will. The highlighted section specifies the ring was intended for me. I turned toward Clara. She didn't change her mind on her deathbed. That was a lie. This is ridiculous, Brent sputtered, but his voice had lost its authority. The pages slipped from his fingers, scattering across the pristine tablecloth. She's always been jealous. Unstable. Father picked up one of the fallen pages, color draining from his tanned face as he read. His shoulders curved inward, aging him 10 years in 10 seconds. Page 4 might interest you most, Dad. My voice softened slightly. Bank statements showing $12,000 withdrawn from Grandma's account 2 weeks before she died. Withdrawn by Brent, who had somehow convinced her to add him to her account. For medical expenses, Brent interjected quickly. She asked me to. Her medical expenses were covered by Medicare and her supplemental insurance. I met his gaze directly. The hospital confirmed that. Sabrina stared at her phone no longer, her eyes wide with genuine surprise. She set it down carefully, as if afraid sudden movements might shatter this unfolding reality. Remember Christmas 2019? Brent pivoted, his voice rising. When she showed up 3 hours late and ruined dinner, she's been trying to destroy this family for years. I was late because I was in the emergency room after a car accident. The words felt like stones dropping from my mouth, heavy with unspoken pain. None of you answered when I called. I still have the hospital bracelet if you'd like to see that evidence too. Aunt Patricia whispered to Uncle George. I always wondered why she had that neck brace. Brent pushed back from the table, chair legs scraping across the patio stones. Mom, tell her this is ridiculous. Marlene's lips parted, but no sound emerged. For once, her practiced social smile failed her. I've only ever tried to protect this family from her, Brent said, desperation creeping into his voice. From her, instability. I watched Himmy brother, my lifelong tormentor, as he tried to reassemble the fragments of his control. His eyes darted around the table, seeking allies, finding uncertainty where blind support once lived. If this drama continues, I'm leaving, he threatened, standing taller. This is the last time I try to be seen by you. My voice carried across the yard, calm yet powerful, like the wind before a storm. While you've been telling everyone I'm a failure, I've been leading a $2.4 million sustainable housing project in Minneapolis. My designs are being featured in Architectural Digest next month. I've built a life you know nothing about because you never bothered to ask. I looked around the table at the family who had never made room for me. I'm done playing a game I was never allowed to win. Clara slipped the sapphire ring from her finger, placing it on the table with a soft clink that echoed in the silence. Your plate is in the garage, I told Brent. allowing myself one small moment of satisfaction. That seems fitting now. I walked away without raising my voice or causing a scene, leaving behind the weight of 3 decades of invisibility. The American flags on the porch columns fluttered in the breeze, red, white, and blue symbols of a freedom I was only now beginning to taste. Behind me, I heard the first cracks in the family mythology Sabrina's quiet, "Did you really send that email?" and Douglas's heavy sigh that carried the weight of a lifetime of silent complicity. For the first time at a family gathering, I left without apologizing for taking up space. The tires of my car crunched over the gravel driveway of the Pinewood Inn an hour later. The white clapboard building stood sentinel-like against the darkening sky, its windows glowing amber in the twilight. I'd driven here on autopilot, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had blanched white. The innkeeper, a woman with silver hair twisted into a loose bun, glanced up as the bell above the door announced my arrival. Her eyes, kind but curious, took in my pressed linen dress and the overnight bag clutched in my white-knuckled grip. "Reservation for Morrison," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Ah, yes, the Lakeview suite." She slid an old-fashioned brass key across the polished oak counter. "Just you tonight?" I nodded, not trusting my voice with more words. The simple question felt loaded after what had just happened. "Fireworks start at 9, she offered. "Best the views from the back porch. Coffee and pie will be served." "Thank you." I took the key, its weight substantial in my palm. The suite was all blues and creams, with wide windows overlooking Cedar Lake. I placed my overnight bag on the quilted bedspread and stood motionless, listening to the unfamiliar creaks of the old building settling. The silence wrapped around me like a blanket, no pointed sighs from my mother, no calculated interruptions from Brent, no strained attempts at small talk from relatives pretending not to notice my exclusion. My phone buzzed in my purse for the 12th time since I'd left the house. I pulled it out, staring at the screen without unlocking it. 6 missed calls from Mom. 3 from Sabrina. 2 from Dad. 1 text from Clara. None from Brent. I powered off the phone and placed it face down on the nightstand. The absence of its constant vibration felt like releasing a breath I'd been holding for 30 years. In the bathroom, I splashed cool water on my face and stared at my reflection. The woman looking back at me seemed different somehow, eyes clearer, shoulders straighter. I'd expected to see tears or rage, but instead found a strange calmness. "You did it," I whispered to my reflection. "You finally did it." The memory of Brent's face as he read through the contents of the envelope replayed in my mind. The confident smirk melted into confusion, then alarm, then raw anger as he flipped through page after damning page. The evidence I'd compiled over months, screenshots of emails where he'd contacted my clients with concerns about my reliability, recordings of conversations where he'd manufactured stories about my supposed failures, bank statements showing the money he'd borrowed from Grandma Edith's account days before her death. And the copy of Grandma's will, with the specific bequest underlined in red, my sapphire ring, passed down from my grandmother to my granddaughter Delaney Edith Morrison, who carries not only my name but my spirit. The look on Clara's face when she instinctively covered the ring on her finger, Grandma's ring. My ring had been almost worth the decades of slights. Almost. An hour later, a knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. "Who is it?" I called, tension immediately flooding back into my shoulders. "Sabrina." I hesitated, hand on the doorknob. Of all the family members who might follow me here, Sabrina was the least expected. She stood in the hallway, mascara smudged beneath her eyes, clutching her purse like a shield. "Can I come in?" Her voice sounded small, reminiscent of the little sister who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms before she learned that siding with Brent earned more parental approval. I stepped aside, saying nothing. Sabrina perched on the edge of the blue armchair near the window, her gaze darting around the room before finally settling on me. "Mom's hysterical," she offered, as if testing the waters. "I'm sure she is. Dad hasn't said a word since you left. He's just sitting on the porch steps with those papers in his hands. I turned toward the window, watching the first boats gathering on the lake for the fireworks show. Did Brent leave? Tires squealing, gravel flying. Uncle George's car got scratched. A small, uncharitable part of me smiled at that image. "Why did you never say anything?" Sabrina asked, her voice cracking. "About Brent, about the ring, about any of it." I turned to face her, really seeing my sister for perhaps the first time in years. Not as the baby of the family who'd learned to mimic Brent's dismissiveness, but as someone who might have been caught in the same web. I was just playing a different role. "Would you have believed me?" Her silence was enough. "How did you know where to find me?" I asked. "Martha told me." "Your neighbor?" Sabrina twisted her fingers together. "I called her when you weren't answering your phone. She said you'd mentioned this place before, that Grandma Edith used to bring you here." The mention of Grandma pierced through my carefully constructed calm. Yes, she'd brought me here for my 16th birthday, the only one my parents had forgotten. We'd sat on the back porch watching fireworks, eating blackberry pie while she told me stories of her youth. "Did you know," I asked Sabrina, "about Brent taking money from Grandma's account? About him convincing Clara the ring was meant for her?" Sabrina shook her head, tears spilling onto her cheeks. "I didn't want to know," she whispered. "It was easier not to see." My phone lit up on the nightstand, Dad's name flashing on the screen. I'd turned it back on without even realizing. Beside it, a notification showed a text from Clara. "Left something with the innkeeper for you. I'm sorry." Outside, the first firework exploded over the lake, momentarily bathing the room in red light. Sabrina flinched at the sound. "He always made sure we were on his side," she said, barely audible over the booms outside. "Do you remember when he told Mom you'd broken her crystal vase?" I was 8. "He broke it. I saw him, but he said if I told, no one would believe me anyway." She looked up, her expression raw with belated realization. He was right. Another explosion of light outside blue this time illuminated the tears on her face. I moved to the window, watching colors burst and fade over the water. Freedom felt different than I'd imagined, heavier, lonelier, but somehow cleaner. "What happens now?" Sabrina asked. I didn't turn around, my eyes fixed on the reflections of fireworks rippling across the dark water. "I don't know yet." But that wasn't entirely true. For the first time in my life, I was writing my own story, not desperately trying to earn a role in someone else's. The next explosion bathed the lake in gold, and I allowed myself a small, sad smile. One Friday morning, at the office, the Mississippi River flowed steady and certain below my office window, a constant in a landscape that had transformed over the past 3 weeks. I stood with my forehead against the cool glass, watching a barge push against the current. My reflection, sharper now, more defined, stared back at me. "Delaney?" My assistant Rachel knocked once before pushing the door open. "Architectural Digest is online too. They want a statement about the Cedar Heights project being nominated for the Sustainability Excellence Award." I straightened my spine and turned. "Tell them I'll call back this afternoon. I need to finalize these revisions first." Rachel nodded, then hesitated. "And there's someone here asking about you. A Mr. Hartwell? Says he's considering our firm for his lakefront development, but heard some family concerns." The words landed like a stone in still water. "Brent's reach extends even here, 3 hours from Cedar Falls." "Send him in," I said. The tremor that would have accompanied those words a month ago was noticeably absent. I settled behind my desk as Rachel showed an salt and pepper-haired man in his 60s. His eyes darted around my office, lingering on the framed award from last year's Green Building Conference. "Mr. Hartwell, please sit down." I gestured to the chair across from me, not rising to shake his hand. He sank into the leather seat. "Miss Morrison, I'll be direct. A colleague mentioned your brother had some concerns about your stability." I reached into my desk drawer and withdrew a folder containing recent press clippings about our sustainable housing project. Sliding it toward him, I held his gaze. "This $2.4 million project came in under budget and ahead of schedule. The mayor will be cutting the ribbon next week. 86 families have affordable, energy-efficient homes because of our team's work." I tapped the folder. "You'll find testimonials from clients inside." "My work speaks for itself, Mr. Hartwell." His eyebrows lifted slightly. I see. If you'd like to discuss your lakefront development, I'd be happy to schedule a proper consultation. If you're here to gossip about my personal life, I'm afraid I have a conference call in 15 minutes. He studied me for a long moment. Then his face broke into an unexpected smile. My wife was right about you. He extended his hand. There is no lakefront development. Patricia Hartwell is my wife. Your aunt. The room tilted briefly. Aunt Patricia, who had stared so intently at her napkin during that July afternoon. She wanted me to see if you were really as formidable as she claimed. He chuckled. You passed with flying colors. Uncle George. The name felt strange on my tongue. I'd barely spoken to him at family gatherings over the years. Patricia sends her love. And an invitation. He placed an envelope on my desk. Coffee, whenever you're ready. No pressure. After he left, I stood at the window again. 3 floors below, he joined a woman waiting on a bench, Aunt Patricia, wearing a blue coat I'd never seen before. They walked away arm in arm, her head tilted toward him as if sharing a secret. My phone buzzed with a text from Sabrina. Coffee tomorrow? Just us. I typed back, Blackbird Cafe, 10 a.m. The Mississippi continued its steady flow below, unchanging yet never the same water twice. The cafe buzzed with Saturday morning energy when Sabrina walked in. Her eyes were puffy, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail so unlike her usually polished appearance. You look different, she said, sliding into the booth across from me. So do you. She twisted her napkin. I started therapy last week. The admission hung between us, fragile as spun glass. Dr. Wilson says I've been following Brent's lead my whole life. Her voice cracked. I never realized. You don't need to explain, I said. No, I do. She met my eyes directly. I'm sorry, Delaney, for everything, for not seeing what was happening. I sipped my coffee, giving myself time. Why now? After you left, things fell apart. Mom keeps pretending nothing's wrong. Brent's been calling creditors from Dad's study when he thinks no one's listening. She pushed her untouched mug away. Clara told me about the ring, about Grandma's will. My fingers instinctively touched the empty space where the ring would sit. I kept it in its box now, saving it for moments that mattered. Did you know he's been lying about his business for years? She continued. The investment firm is practically bankrupt. I thought of the bank statements in the envelope I'd given Brent, the puzzle pieces connecting. Monthly coffee, I said finally. That's what I can offer right now. Relief washed over her face. I'll take it. Outside, autumn painted the Minneapolis streets in amber and crimson. Fallen leaves scattered across the sidewalk as we paused by my car. How do you do it? Sabrina asked suddenly. Start over? I unlocked my door, considering the question. You stop building on a foundation that was never meant to support you. Architect of sustainable structures. Architect of my own life. 5 months later, the Christmas tree stood in the corner of my living room, adorned not with the matching gold and burgundy ornaments my mother insisted were the only acceptable holiday palette, but with an eclectic collection gathered over years of travel. A miniature copper Guggenheim from New York, a hand-blown glass spiral from a Portland artisan, a tiny silver frame holding Grandma Edith's last Christmas photo. 5 months since the 4th of July confrontation, and my apartment finally reflected me instead of an imagined version my family might approve of. The walls, once beige to avoid criticism, now showcased the deep forest green I'd always loved. Grandma's antique writing desk sat beneath the window, bathed in winter light. I twisted Grandma Edith's sapphire ring, now properly sized for my finger. The stone caught the morning sun, sending blue reflections dancing across my ceiling. 3 jewelers had exclaimed over its quality before I found one who didn't ask why a ring clearly meant for me needed resizing from Clara's much smaller finger. My phone buzzed with another text from Sabrina. On our way. Clara's driving. ETA 30 minutes. The concept still startled Memmy's sister and cousin choosing my gathering over the traditional Morrison family Christmas Eve dinner. Douglas had called yesterday to confirm he wouldn't attend my parents' event either, opting instead for a quiet dinner with his new girlfriend, a therapist named Joan he'd met at a grief support group. Around 15 minutes later, the doorbell chimed as I arranged cranberry-studded cheese on a platter. Too early for Sabrina and Clara. I wiped my hands and glanced through the peephole. My stomach dropped. Marlene stood in the hallway, Brent hovering behind her shoulder. Both wore their Christmas best. Marlene's crimson sweater adorned with tasteful gold jewelry, Brent's camel haircoat probably costing more than my monthly mortgage. My phone vibrated with Douglas's name on the screen. I answered immediately. Delaney. His voice came urgent and clear. Marlene and Brent are heading to your place. I tried to talk them out of it, but... They're already here, I whispered, watching Marlene's finger press the doorbell again. The chime echoed through my apartment. I'm 15 minutes away, Douglas said. Do you want me to? No, I straightened my shoulders. I've got this. I hung up and opened the door, positioning myself squarely in the frame, blocking entry. Marlene, Brent, this is unexpected. Marlene's practiced smile didn't reach her eyes. Darling, we couldn't let Christmas pass without seeing you. She stepped forward as if to enter, but I remained planted in the doorway. I'm hosting friends shortly, I said, my voice calm despite the hammering in my chest. You should have called first. Brent's jaw tightened. Called first? We're your family. Family respects boundaries, I replied, the words flowing easier than I'd expected. Months of therapy with Dr. Stone had prepared me for this moment. Marlene's smile faltered. We've always supported you, Delaney. This ridiculous estrangement has gone on long enough. The old me would have acquiesced, stepped aside, allowed them to commandeer my holiday. The new me recognized the manipulation. No, you've always needed me to be less than I am, I said quietly. Brent stepped forward, towering over me as he had since childhood. Dad's blood pressure is through the roof because of your selfishness. Is that what you want? To send him to an early grave because you can't let go of imagined slights? A deep voice behind them cut through the tension. Don't use me as a weapon, Brent. 10 minutes later, Douglas stood in the hallway, snow dusting his shoulders. The transformation in him startled me most of all. He stood taller, his perpetually hunched shoulders now square. Marlene whirled to face him. What are you doing here? You said you had a headache. I lied, Douglas said simply. I'm tired of lying. Brent's face reddened. What is this, some kind of intervention? You've always thought you're better than us, haven't you, Delaney? I studied my brother, his perfect hair, his expensive watch, his practiced indignation, and felt something unexpected. Pity. No, Brent. I've always thought I was less. You made sure of it. I gripped the doorframe. If you want any relationship with me going forward, here are my terms. Therapy, both individual and family. Respect for my boundaries. Complete honesty. Marlene's hand flew to her throat. This is absurd. We're standing in a hallway on Christmas Eve. Yes, I agreed, because you arrived uninvited after I made it clear I needed space. This is what we get for trying to mend fences, Brent snapped. Come on, Mom, she's made her choice. Marlene's eyes darted between Douglas and me. Douglas, you're coming with us, now. My father shook his head. No, Marlene, I'm staying. Something flickered in Brent's eyes, the realization that his power over our family had finally broken. He grabbed Marlene's elbow, steering her toward the elevator. I watched them retreat, then turned to Douglas. Would you like to come in for coffee? Sabrina and Clara will be here soon. He nodded, a tentative smile forming. I'd like that very much. As I closed the door behind us, the sapphire ring caught the light again. For the first time since Grandma Edith had whispered its promise to me, it felt like it truly belonged on my finger. Another July has come, and now the sun blazed overhead as I arranged a cluster of daisies in a blue ceramic vase on my patio table. My new home in Minneapolis gleamed with fresh paint and possibility, a far cry from the prison of expectations I'd left behind in Cedar Falls. Need help with those chairs? Jordan called from the kitchen doorway, sleeves rolled up to reveal tanned forearms. His smile still caught me off guard, sometimes genuine, without the sharp edges I'd grown accustomed to in my family. I've got it, I said, shifting the patio furniture into a conversational circle. Could you check if the ice has melted in the coolers? A year had passed since I'd stood in my parents' backyard, an envelope clutched in my hands, my heart thundering against my ribs. 365 days of rebuilding, of learning how to exist without constantly bracing for dismissal. The doorbell chimed. My shoulders didn't tense. Another small victory. I'll get it, Jordan said, squeezing my shoulder as he passed. Douglas's voice filtered through the open windows, followed by a woman's laugh, warm and uninhibited. I smoothed my sundress and touched Grandma Edith's sapphire ring, now properly sized for my finger. I wore it today not as armor but as celebration. "There she is," Douglas said as I rounded the corner. His face had softened over the months, worry lines replaced by smile creases. Beside him stood Catherine, her silver-streaked hair cut in a stylish bob, her hand resting comfortably in his. "The place looks wonderful," she said, offering a bottle of wine. "Douglas mentioned you have an eye for design, but this..." She gestured to the open concept living area with its exposed beams and walls the color of summer wheat. "This feels like home." "That's exactly what I wanted," I replied, accepting the wine with a genuine smile. Douglas hesitated, then stepped forward to hug me. His embrace had changed, no longer stiff with unspoken apologies, but present and warm. "Happy Independence Day," he said, pulling back to meet my eyes direct another change. The man who once couldn't hold my gaze now didn't look away. The doorbell rang again. Sabrina and Clara arrived together, carrying matching dessert containers and wearing sundresses in complementary shades of green. "We made Grandma's apple cobbler," Clara announced, holding up her container. The sapphire ring no longer adorned her finger. She'd returned it without prompting the day after last year's confrontation, along with a letter I'd read so many times the creases had begun to fade. "And I didn't even burn it," Sabrina added with a laugh. Her voice carried a confidence I'd never heard during our childhood. Weekly therapy had straightened her spine and loosened the anxious set of her mouth, though I did call Clara 3 times to confirm the recipe. As afternoon mellowed toward evening, my backyard filled with voice of colleagues from Ecovision, neighbors who'd become friends, and the fragments of family who'd chosen truth over comfort. The conspicuous absence of Marlene and Brent hung in the air for no one but me, and even then, it felt more like relief than loss. "Attention, everyone," Douglas stood, tapping his glass as the sky burnished gold. People quieted, turning toward him. Catherine squeezed his free hand. "I'd like to propose a toast to families we choose and those who choose to change." His voice wavered slightly, but his eyes remained steady. "To new traditions and second chances." Glasses lifted, Jordan's shoulder pressed against mine. After dinner, as fireworks blossomed over the Minneapolis skyline, I found myself standing at the edge of my garden. Jordan passed me a sparkler, its tip flaring white-hot against the darkening sky. "Last year at this time, you were watching fireworks alone from that inn by the lake," he said quietly. "Remember when you told me about that?" I nodded, watching the sparkler trace golden arcs through the air. I thought I was ending something then, I didn't realize I was beginning. Later, when the guests had gone and Jordan had fallen asleep, I sat at Grandma Edith's writing desk by the window. The city still sparkled with distant celebrations. I opened my journal, leather-bound, a gift to myself, and wrote by the light of a single lamp. "Freedom isn't about walking away forever. It's about walking away long enough to find yourself." I slipped Grandma's ring from my finger, pressing it briefly to my lips before placing it in the carved wooden box on my desk. I'd wear it again, but not daily. Some treasures belong to special moments, not everyday battles. Outside, the last of the fireworks scattered silver across the black canvas of night. I no longer needed to prove my worth through perfect dishes or carefully wrapped presents. The people who mattered saw me clearly, and at last, so did I.